All right, class. So we're going to start moving into chapter 6 now, which deals with percent. So the first thing we're going to look at is 6.1. Some of the objectives and some of the outcomes that we're hoping to get out of this is we want to learn the meaning of a percent. We want to be able to write percents as decimals and then decimals as percents. And then we want to understand what it means if you have 100%, 200%, 300% of a value. And on the flip side of that, what if you only have 50% or 10% or even 1% of the value? So these are just some of the objectives that we're going to try to start looking at in this section. All right, so if we just look here, you can look at this box, and if you notice, we have inside the box there's 100 of those little bitty tiny squares, and if you look, you can count that 11 of those are shaded blue. And so if we were just wanted to know what portion of the square was shaded blue, well, we have 11 out of 100, so therefore we have 11% of the box. So this is kind of gives you an example of how you can use percents. Percents, they just mean per 100. They're based off of they're based out of 100. So, and then the percent sign, that's just used to show that the number of parts out of 100 parts. So if we just go back and you see down at the bottom you have 11%, well, that just says, hey, out of the 100 parts that you have 11 of those are colored blue, so that's 11%. So just kind of understand some percents. Let's say if we have 52 out of 100 chickens or hens, then we would say that 52 per 100 or 52 over 100 or 52% are hens. So again, anytime you have something based out of 100, then that's what our percentage. And so if we look at B, a person pays a tax of $9 on every $100 of purchases. So then the tax rate is $9 per 100. So if you bought something for $100, then you would have to pay $9 extra for the tax. There's two ways that we can write percents. The first one is with our percentage equaling P over 100. And then the second one is our percentage being divided by 100. If you notice here, there's certain times where we use each one. If I'm trying to go from a percent to a decimal, we're going to use the first one. But then if I'm trying to go from a percentage to a fraction, if I'm going from a percentage to a fraction, then I want to use the first one. And then if we're going from a percentage to a decimal, then we'll use the second one. So the first thing is we're just looking for percents trying to write percents as decimals. So if we look at A, we have 32%. If I want to write it as a decimal, well again, just notice here it just says, hey, if you want to write it as a decimal, you just divide your percentage by 100. So we take 32, divide that by 100, and we get 0.32 or 32 hundredths. All right, same thing with the 78%. 78 divided by 100 equals 0.78 or 78 hundredths. And again, one thing too, if you remember when we dealt with decimals and dividing by powers of 10, when you divide by a power of 10, you're really just multiplying, you're really just moving the decimal by the number of zeros you have. So if you're dividing by 100, you have 2 zeros, so you just wind up moving your decimal 2 places. And you can check yourself on C and D, so writing percents as a decimal, you just want to drop the percent sign, divide by 100. And again, so this kind of gives you an illustration here of what I was trying to talk about earlier, where you can just drop your percent sign completely and then just move your decimal over to the left 2 places. So remember, dividing by 100 is the same as moving my decimal over to the left 2 places. So 180%, take my decimal, move it to the left twice, and we're left with 1.80 or 1 8/10. All right, so just take a minute and try C and D here. All right, so hopefully you gave yourself a little time to try C and D. Let's just take a look at the answer. So for C, move it twice, you get 0.032. For 0.7%, you move it twice. You're going to have to put in some zeros for placeholders here. You get 0.007. All right, so those are some good examples of how we would write our percents as decimals. Now let's go the other way. Now let's write our decimals as a percent. So if we go from a percent to a decimal, we move it twice to the left. Well, now when I'm going from a decimal to a percent, I'm multiplying by 100, so I'm moving twice to the right. And again, if you need to, you can feel free to pause the video and kind of copy the chart down here. This is a very good chart for you to know and for you to kind of memorize on how your decimals move how your decimal points move from left to right, depending on whether you're going from a decimal to a percent or a percent to a decimal. All right, so here we want to write each one of these decimals as a percentage. And so again, so we're multiplying by 100, but when we multiply by 100, we're really just moving that decimal twice to the right. So 0.26, move it twice to the right, and we just get 26%. One thing you want to be really careful with is since you are moving, you're going from a decimal to a percent, you always want to make sure you add that percent sign back onto your final answer. So now B, 0.376, again, move it twice to the right and you get 37.6. And just remember, make sure you add that percent sign onto the very end of the problem. All right, so just pause the video now, take you a few minutes and try to do C, D, and E, and then we'll come back and look at your answers. All right, so hopefully you gave yourself some time to try C, D, and E and see if you get them right. So let's just go through the answers rather quickly now. So 1.83, well, that just becomes 183%. D, 3.4, well, that becomes 340%. Again, we have to add a 0 for a placeholder. And then E, we're going to have to add a couple of zeros here, and so we wind up getting 500%. All right, so hopefully you did good on those. If not, then just go back and reread through the notes and try some more practice problems from your book or from some of the worksheets that you'll get in class. All right, so now let's move on to something a little different here. So when you're working with percents, you always want to have what we call reference points, and so some reference points are some of the easy percent problems to find, like 100% or 200%. So if you have 18 parts and you have 100% of 18 parts, then that's all 18. And so it's just easy to have some of these reference points when doing percent problems. So let's just try to fill in the blanks on some of these, and we can do these together. But if we have 100% of 24 people, well, if we have 100% of 24 people, that means we have everybody. We have all 24 people, so my answer is just 24. All right, B, well, if I have 200% of $25, what would that be? Well, 100% of $25 would just be $25. So if we have twice that amount, if we have 200%, then we have twice $25, so we have $50. And so these are just quick, easy percent problems to do that's going to allow us to get these reference points. And then the last one here, if I have 300% of 12 animals, that means I have 100% of 12 animals. So I have 3 times 12, and that's going to give me 36 animals total. And that would give us our 300% of 12 animals. All right, and then the last one, we're just going to try a few more reference points here. It says we want to, again, fill in the blanks. Well, if we have 50% of 36 hours, what would that be? Well, again, 50%, that's just half. So we have half of 36 hours, and that's just 18 hours. Then B, if we have 10% of 320 pages, again, 10% of 320, so we just want a tenth of that, so move our decimal place, and that's going to give me 32 pages. Then the last one is we want 1% of $780, just 1%. So we want to move our decimal places twice to the left in this case, because really, remember, we're kind of dividing here, so move it twice to the left and we get $7.80. All right, so hopefully that's the end of 6.1. Hopefully that kind of gives you a good idea of what percents are and how to work with percents. And just make sure you go to the next video and when we start applying percents into application problems.